This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's January 28th, 2026. On this day in 1887, the world's largest snowflake, at least the largest ever measured, fell near Missoula, Montana. And as I read the description of it and of that storm in general in the Guinness World Record account, I just can't quite wrap my mind around what it could have really looked like. People at the time described that snowfall as having flakes larger than milk pans, with some measured to be up to 15 inches wide and 8 inches thick. A snowflake the size of a really big dictionary. Can you even imagine? I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. I know I said it here the other day, but at this point it feels hard to fathom that a week ago we were all considering the possibility that Middle Tennessee could get a foot of snow. And now I have to remind myself that, yeah, it was snow to start, and it was just snow for hours. Because once it turned to sleet and then to freezing rain, well, as we all know all too well, the game changed in a pretty major way. But of course, the thing about winter weather in the South is that ice is always a strong possibility. Even when the storm is mostly snow, there's usually a pretty strong ice component as well. That's one of the things that sets our snowstorms apart from the winter weather people live with in the Northeast or Midwest. It's almost unheard of for Tennessee to get the kind of snow where a shovel or a snowblower is all you need to clear a path and be on your way. So why is that the case? Why did that giant weather system that seemed to be bringing snow turn into an ice storm when it got to us? And why was it so hard for forecasters to know last week whether they should be warning us to prepare for snow or for ice? Well, that's because we live in a zone where cold air from the Arctic bumps up against the warm air from the Gulf of Mexico. Sometimes the Arctic air comes in with the kind of pressure and force that makes it dominate the weather here. Sometimes the forces from the Gulf are more dominant. And when they slam into each other over our heads, things can go all kinds of ways. Even when we have absolutely frigid systems move in, there's always the possibility that warmth from the south might melt that precipitation before it makes it to the ground. Or if it doesn't, but the Gulf temps have been more dominant for a while before snowfall, then the ground and the trees might be warm enough that the first snow that falls melts on contact into water, which then freezes over after the Arctic cold temperatures take over. What's more, we're not too far from the Appalachian Mountains, and they can create a phenomenon that meteorologists describe as a wedge. Cold air gets almost trapped against the mountains. It slows down, while Gulf air keeps moving in to melt that snow into sleet or freezing rain. But remember, heat rises. So on a day like this past Sunday, the Gulf air is up pretty high in the atmosphere, while the frigid air from the Arctic still dominates closer to the ground, making that rain freeze into a thick coating on tree limbs and roadways. And all of that combined makes for a very tricky set of conditions for forecasters to sort out when they're trying to figure out which way things will go during a winter storm in this part of the country. Every now and then, we get a doozy of a storm that reminds us all how susceptible the South really is to dangerous ice formations. And I've got a feeling that for years to come, every one of us who is making it through this lingering ice storm now will think about it whenever there's a possibility of snow in the forecast. And we'll make our preparations with a voice in the back of our mind saying, sure, they're predicting snow, but I better be ready for ice. In just a few minutes, families riding out the ice storm with newborns. That's coming up after the newscast.
Thematic Static on WNXP is the mixtape we make together. A themed set loosely organized by you, the listener, handpicking songs according to a theme. Airing first Thursdays at 9 a.m. and again Saturdays at 9 a.m., Thematic Static plucks your requests from the socials at WNXP Nashville and by voice memo at 615-320-9100. Thematic Static, the mixtape we make together, supported by United Record Pressing, only on WNXP.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. State officials have now confirmed 8 weather-related deaths across Tennessee. And some details are now available about the 2 deaths that have occurred in Davidson County. One was a 90-year-old woman in an assisted living facility who fell while her power was out. The other was a woman who slid down a hill near Wedgwood Avenue and was found by a passerby. The State Department of Health has also confirmed weather-related deaths in Cheatham, Crockett, Haywood, Hickman, Knox, and Obion counties. Nashville Police Chief John Drake warns that the situation is still dangerous and urges residents to use caution.
Again, if power is restored at your home and you need a ride, we will give you that ride. Please continue to use caution. The roads are still icy. They're still slippery. And if you don't have to be out, please take advantage of that and don't be out. As you see power lines down, treat every power line as a live wire. Do not touch it and stay away from it. And be careful standing under this ice. As our temperatures go to 32 degrees, you'll see large amounts of ice drop from power lines and from trees.
It seems that getting transportation has made a big difference in the number of people using warming shelters in Nashville. On Monday night, 439 people used the centers. That's 4 times as many as the night before. And that's after Metro set up the hotline for Nashville's transportation assistance to help folks get to shelters and warming centers. Ellie Kane and her husband left their East Nashville home with no power to stay at the warming center in Madison. Kane called in the next day to our Daily Show. This is Nashville.
It had gotten to the point it was so cold I thought I might die.
What do you mean?
I was crying. I was scared. You know, there's a difference between being cold and bone cold and confused and scared. I have health issues. I'm 71. I thought, I better find a way out of here.
If you or a loved one need transportation to an overnight shelter, you can call 615-401-1712. Nashville centers are at the Fairgrounds, Madison, and Southeast Community Centers. And that number again, which is for Davidson County, is 615-401-1712. Statewide, there are more than 100 warming centers open with varying hours and availability. You can contact your local emergency management agency for information. And if you need to conduct a welfare check on a loved one, you can make a request through Hub Nashville. That's available at hub.nashville.gov or by calling 311 if that person is in Davidson County. Elsewhere in the state, the TBI is using what is normally its tip line as a central point of communication about welfare checks. And you can call to request a welfare check on someone in another part of Tennessee using the number 1-800-TBI-FIND. Utility companies in Middle Tennessee say they're working around the clock with hundreds of extra technicians to restore electricity to all customers. But frustrations are mounting among those still without power or whose power was restored only to go out again. And now restoration progress seems to have slowed. To understand the process, our Daily Show, This is Nashville, spoke with Brent Baker of Nashville Electric Service and Amy Byers of Middle Tennessee Electric.
How we manage a storm like this is to start at those biggest outage main circuits, 1,000 or 2,000 customers or more, and start to restore those. At the end of any event like this, there will be those small numbers that are more difficult to get to as well.
We're in the slow go part of it now. The outages are still happening. So, the ice is continually weakening those limbs. They may not fall immediately. One of our crews fixed a main line, and as they were pulling away, a limb fell on the span that they had just repaired.
The utilities also cannot restore service if the home's equipment, like meter bases and weather heads, is broken or damaged. Those should first be repaired by a licensed technician. And both NES and Middle Tennessee Electric have posted pictures on their web pages and on their social media to show what that damaged equipment might look like. Well, even as the sun comes out and temperatures begin to slowly rise, the ramifications from the winter storm continue. Water now becomes one of the gravest risks, especially in warmer temperatures. As the ground begins to defrost, soil and underground pipes can shift, which could cause those pipes to break. Main breaks can be identified by water running in the street. Metro is currently most concerned about this happening in the Oak Hill, Jolton, and Love Circle areas. The other risk is pipes freezing. That's why the city is encouraging residents to continue to drip their faucets. Metro Water Services Director Scott Potter assures residents it will not cause any major spikes to water bills.
So 100 gallons of water at Metro Water Services, including your sewer fees and applicable taxes, costs $1.70. And if you let your faucet run for 24 hours, the worst case scenario is it'll drip about 40 gallons per day. So if you do that math, you can have 3 faucets run a day for 24 hours, protecting your home plumbing, and it'll cost you $1.70.
Potter says that it's clear people are doing this, given that roughly 35 million more gallons are being used every day than usual. Well, a dangerous mix of ice and snow is keeping kids in Nashville out of school most of this week, and many other counties as well. WPLN's Camelia Burris spoke to a family about how they've been weathering the storm.
Carmel Bailey and her teenage son Carson have spent the last few days playing board games and trying to keep their bearded lady dragon warm after losing power.
When the lights go out, they have no source of warmth. So we had to bundle my son's lizard. Her name is Sharkeisha, and she got really cold. So we had to rescue her.
They filled her tank with blankets to keep her warm as the temperature in their Antioch home dropped down to just 54 degrees. Their power was restored, however, around 10 p.m. on Sunday, just in time for Carson's birthday on Monday.
My son was able to kind of bring in his birthday, so it kind of became his own midnight celebration. We made a pizza because we suddenly had power and we could actually cook, but it became a nice little intimate celebration.
Schools in Nashville will be out until at least Thursday. Camelia Burris, WPLN News.
You can expect a delay to mail and shipments over a few days. The State Transportation Department did not give a timeline for when the roads will be clear or when mail can return to normal. FedEx and UPS shipments are not eligible for money-back guarantees because of the bad weather. The Postal Service also ended its service guarantee for Priority Mail Express. Well, there is other news going on beyond the ice storm, and amid criticism over his immigration enforcement policies, President Donald Trump pointed to Memphis as an example of a city that cooperated with ICE during their crackdown in October. Trump posted to Truth Social over the weekend asking why Minneapolis can't be like Memphis. But one local official says it's a false comparison. Memphis State Senator Ramesh Akbari tells WPLN News that ICE activity in Memphis is nothing like what Minneapolis is experiencing.
What we've seen happen in Minneapolis is just absolutely terrifying. In Memphis, we're seeing a bunch of traffic stops and kind of little things, but what we've seen in Minnesota has been, really aggressive, I think, and really bad.
When the National Guard was deployed to Memphis last year, the purpose was crime reduction, not immigration enforcement. And Akbari points out that the city, at the time, was already experiencing a decades-low dip in crime. Memphis does not have an agreement with ICE under the 287G program, which allows for state and local agencies to act as immigration enforcement agents, but that could change. Republicans' leadership in Tennessee is looking to pass legislation that would require all local law enforcement in the state to partner with ICE. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. For many Middle Tennesseans, power outages have now lasted half a week. This is challenging for the hardiest of folks, and especially for the smallest. Some Nashvillians gave birth right before the ice storm hit and made it home only to lose electricity. WPLN's Tasha A.F. Lemley talked with 2 families with newborns to hear how they're surviving the cold.
It's 43 in here, middle of the day, but last night it dipped, in the mid-30s.
Zach Small is a first-time dad, but he already knows he's not having a typical experience.
My dog crates down here, because I can't have them up with the baby, I've covered them with blankets, and they're hardy hound dogs, so they're doing okay. I think they're a little confused by the baby.
Oh, yeah. You have a new baby.
I do. He's 4 years old, Mr. Otto.
Or 4 days old.
4 days. Yeah, 4 days old. Yeah.
I was like, you can't. It's so new. It can't even register yet.
It's crazy to bring home a baby in general, and then to add this on top of it is just a whole nother level. So
Otto arrived on Thursday, January 22nd. That's less than 48 hours before the storm he'll likely have to hear about for the rest of his life. He did arrive a week after his due date. So Joanna had her labor induced, hoping to beat the storm. Then with a 3-day-old baby and freezing temperatures, they lost power in their East Nashville home. Neighbors pitched in with a generator and space heater. The generator is outside, a few yards away from the back door. And from there, Zach has an extension cord running all the way through the bottom level of their house and upstairs to the nursery.
So yeah, we just tried to focus all the heat in one room, in his room. So it's got to be like, in the mid 60s. So it's holding good.
Just down the road, Nikki Parra and her family found themselves in a chillingly similar situation. Baby Bryn, she made it home from the hospital on Thursday, got snowed in on Saturday, and she lost power on Sunday.
This is like the first time that I've ever been in like a really bad snowstorm like this. So we kind of just hung out, and I just had the baby on my chest. We have 2 other kids, so they were kind of okay just running around.
Parra's oldest child is 10, middle is 7, and nonverbal. When the power went out, she says she panicked, and her husband posted their situation on the neighborhood Facebook group.
A lot of people, reached out and were able to offer their homes to us.
The whole family got to relocate to a nearby Airbnb, but it wasn't easy.
It was her second time ever being in the car other than coming home from the hospital, and I was shaking the entire time because there was ice on the road, and it was just very scary.
But they made it.
The woman who we're staying with is so sweet, but me and her both kind of started crying a little bit just because it's just a very emotional thing, especially with her being so little and just how quickly everything was able to come into play, and also how quickly everything happened from the storm. We're just thankful that she's had power this whole time.
Parra says her husband checks on their dogs back at home as much as he can, and she's really worried about them. Overall, though, she's just grateful. And some good news for Zach, Joanna, baby Otto, and their dogs is that their power has been restored in a city where, for now at least, electricity just isn't guaranteed. For WPLN News, I'm Tasha A.F. Limley.
Vanilla ice, baby. Oh, ice, baby. Now that the body is jumping.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/Nashvillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.